Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to another lesson. In this lesson, we are going to learn about IELTS Speaking Part 1. The topic of our lesson is rainy days. Rainy days. In this lesson, we are going to look at some questions that you're likely to get during your IELTS Speaking Part 1. We are also going to look at some sample answers, and at the end of this lesson, I'm going to give you some very useful tips to ensure that you pass your IELTS speaking test with a very high band. Now, before we begin this lesson, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's get into our lesson. The first question is, does it rain much in your country? Does it rain much in your country? In this question, the examiner wants to know, does it rain a lot in your country? Now, to answer this question, you can say, it depends. Some parts of the country, especially in the north, tend to experience a heavy downpour throughout the year, but the rest of the country is often quite dry. It depends. Some parts of the country, especially in the north, tend to experience a heavy downpour throughout the year, but the rest of the country is often quite dry. Now, in that answer, I have begun with it depends. And the reason for that answer is because when it comes to how much rain we receive in my country, it's not the same in all the different parts of the country. That's why I started with it depends. Some parts of the country, especially in the north, tend to experience a heavy downpour throughout the year, but the rest of the country is often quite dry. So you can begin with it depends when, in your case, in your country, some parts have more rain than others. Now, you notice that the entire sentence after it depends is a complex sentence. In that sentence, I have also used the linking word but. Now let's move on to question 2. Would you prefer to have more or less rain in your country? In this question, the examiner wants to know, in your opinion, if you had your way, would you prefer to have more or would you prefer to have less rain in your country? What would you prefer? Now you can answer this question by saying, I would prefer less rain only because I hate getting soaked in the rain, but on the other hand, farmers need the rain for a good harvest. A good harvest keeps food costs low. I would prefer less rain only because I hate getting soaked in the rain. But on the other hand, farmers need the rain for a good harvest. A good harvest keeps food costs low. Now, in that answer, I have looked at two sides of the coin. I have looked at both sides. Personally, I would prefer less rain. And that is because, according to my answer, I hate getting soaked in the rain. But on the other hand, farmers need the rain for a good harvest, because a good harvest means that food prices are low. So you are allowed to actually have a divided sort of opinion, as long as you explain it, okay? In my case, I have pointed out, yes, I would prefer less rain, but on the other hand, I would prefer a little bit more rain because farmers need the rain. Because when it rains, then it means the farmers get a good harvest. And when we get a good harvest, it means food prices will remain low. Okay? Now you notice that once more, that entire sentence, the first one is a complex sentence. You can see I have used a number of linking words in that answer. Only because, but on the other hand, and then the last sentence, a good harvest keeps food costs low, is a simple sentence. A good harvest keeps food costs low. Now let's move on to question 3. Do you prefer rainy or sunny days? Do you prefer rainy or sunny days? In that question, the examiner simply wants to know, what would you prefer? What do you prefer more? Do you prefer rainy or sunny days? Now you can answer that question by saying, in general, I enjoy sunnier days more because I can do a lot of outdoor activities such as cycling or playing football. On rainy days, however, I tend to feel a bit down and less energetic. In general, I enjoy sunnier days more because I can do a lot of outdoor activities such as cycling or playing football. On rainy days, however, I tend to feel a bit down and less energetic. Now in that answer, I have pointed out to the examiner that in general, I enjoy sunnier days. And that is because when we have sunny days, I can do a lot of outdoor activities such as cycling or playing football. I'd prefer not to have rainy days because, as I pointed out there, I feel a bit down. When you feel a bit down in English, it means you feel sad, you feel a bit depressed. Your mood is low, okay? So I have pointed out I prefer sunnier days because when it's sunny, then I can do a lot of outdoor activities. For example, I can go cycling or playing football. Because when we have rainy days, I tend to feel a bit down, a bit depressed, okay, and less energetic. That means I feel like I have very little energy, okay? Now, in that answer, as you can see, I did not simply say to the examiner, I prefer rainy days. I prefer sunny days. No, I have to explain why. I prefer sunnier days because I do a lot of outdoor activities. And then I've given some examples, such as cycling or playing football. And then I have explained to the examiner why I don't like rainy days. Because, as I pointed out there, I tend to feel a bit down and less energetic on rainy days. Now, you can also see in that answer, I have used a number of linking words, such as because, such as or, however, and once more, in the first sentence, that is an example of a complex sentence, and then we have a compound sentence. On rainy days, however, I tend to feel a bit down and less energetic. Now let's move on to question 4. What effects can shortage of rain have on people's lives? What effects can shortage of rain have on people's lives? In that question, the examiner simply wants to know, okay, when you have shortage, it means you have very little. When you have very little rain, how can that affect people's lives? How can lack of rain affect people's lives? Now you can answer that question by saying, lack of rain can lead to a drought, which may cause starvation because farmers have a poor harvest. As a result, food becomes pricey. Lack of rain can lead to a drought, which may cause starvation because farmers have a poor harvest. As a result, food becomes pricey. Now, in that answer, I have pointed out what the effects of a shortage of rain are. Lack of rain, it can lead to a number of things. One, it can lead to a drought. A drought is when you don't have any rain at all and everything dries up, the crops dry up. So when you have lack of rain, then that can lead to a drought. And when you have a drought, then it may cause starvation. Starvation when it means that people go hungry without any food. They are starving, okay? They have no food to eat because there is a drought, because there is no rain, okay? And the reason why you have that is because when you have no rain, then farmers have a poor harvest. A poor harvest, it means that they have not harvested a lot. The farmers have not harvested much because there is no rain, okay? And as a result of that, then food becomes very expensive. It becomes pricey. Pricey is a synonym for expensive, okay? So I have explained what the effects are, okay? I have used linking words to help me to do that. Immediately, as soon as you have lack of rain, you have a drought. When you have a drought, then you have starvation. And the reason you have starvation is because farmers have a poor harvest. And when you have starvation, then food becomes very expensive. Okay? Now you notice in that sentence, I started off with a compound sentence. Lack of rain can lead to a drought, which may cause starvation because farmers have a poor harvest. Actually, that is a complex sentence because we have two linking words, that is which and because. Okay, and then the last sentence, as a result, food becomes pricey. That is a simple sentence. Now you notice I have a number of ideas in that answer. Okay, I have a number of ideas. I have the idea of drought. I have the idea of starvation. I have the idea of a poor harvest, and I've joined all those points together using connectors or linking words, which are which and because. Okay, now let's move on to question 5. Does rain ever affect transportation in your country? Does rain ever affect transportation in your country? In that question, the examiner simply wants to know, when it rains, does that affect transportation? When it rains really in your country, when it rains really heavily, what do the roads look like? Okay, how does it affect transportation? How does it affect the way the buses move, the cars, the trains, the trams, the trains? Okay, how does rain affect transportation in your country? Now you can answer this question by saying, so the examiner asks, does rain ever affect transportation in your country? Yes. Whenever it rains heavily, the roads become impassable and quite treacherous. This tends to create traffic jams as well as car accidents. Yes, whenever it rains heavily, the roads become impassable and quite treacherous. This tends to create traffic jams as well as car accidents. So in that answer, I have confirmed to the examiner that indeed in my country, rain does affect transportation. And that happens when it rains heavily, whenever it rains heavily. As soon as that happens, the roads become impassable. Impassable means that it becomes difficult for cars to drive through. Impassable, not possible to pass, impassable. And quite treacherous. Treacherous means dangerous, okay? So when it rains really heavily, the roads become impassable and quite dangerous. Dangerous is a synonym for treacherous. And as a result, This tends to create traffic jams, okay? You have a lot of traffic jams when the roads are impassable, okay? It creates traffic jams as well as car accidents. So traffic jams is when the cars are not moving at all because they are moving at a very high speed and they move for a few minutes and then they stop, okay? You have a lot of cars on the roads. And then, so in that answer, I have not just said to the examiner yes, but I've also explained how rain affects transportation in my country. And I've pointed out that when it rains heavily, the roads become impassable and quite treacherous. Okay? And this tends to create traffic jams as well as car accidents. So you notice in that answer, I have about 4 points there. I have the roads become impassable, 2, quite treacherous, 3, traffic jams, and I have car accidents. I've just joined all my points together using linking words such as and as well as, okay? Now this brings me to the next section of our lesson where I'm going to give you a number of tips to ensure that you score a very high band in your speaking test. Tip number 1, please ensure that you understand the questions. In each question, underline the key words. Like you can see, I have done in all my 5 questions, I have underlined the key words to ensure that I do not go off topic. Tip number 2, ensure that you use, for each question, ensure that you have 2 to 3 ideas. Okay? Do not simply tell the examiner yes or no. Explain your answer, elaborate your answer. So you do that by ensuring that for each question you provide 2 to 3 points or 2 to 3 ideas, and then join your ideas together. That brings me to the next tip. Join your ideas together using linking words. In my answers, all the red words are linking words. But, because, but on the other hand, such as, however, and, as a result. But ensure that you use the linking words correctly. You have to know which linking words you use, like for example, when you're adding, okay? Also, we have linking words that we use when we are contrasting ideas. Now, if you have a few problems with how to use linking words, then check my playlist. I have a video that I have uploaded about connectors or linking words. That will help you to know when we use different connectors and also how to use the connectors to form simple, compound, and complex sentences. And that brings me to the next tip. In your answers, you have to ensure that you use a variety of sentence structures. You must use simple, compound, and complex sentences. Okay? Now, the next tip that is very important is that you ensure that you use the correct vocabulary for the topic that you're talking about. Okay? Try and use good vocabulary for high bands. Okay? Like for example, in my answers, you can see I have used, for example, in example 2, okay, I have used, for example, getting soaked in the rain. Okay? A good harvest keeps food costs low. All right. Now, in the next one, you can see I have used vocabulary such as I enjoy sunnier days more. That expression, less energetic. I feel a bit down. Outdoor activities. Okay. In the next answer, you can see I have used words such as drought. I have used starvation, a poor harvest, pricey. Okay. And in the last sentence, you can see I have used words such as impassable, treacherous, traffic jams, car accidents. Okay? All these are words or vocabulary or phrases that we would associate with rainy days. Okay? And this brings me to the next very important point, That is, try and use intonation when you're speaking. Now, you use intonation in your mother tongue, so the examiner expects you to use it during your speaking test. And what is intonation? It simply means raise and lower your voice depending on what it is that you're trying to say. You do that in your mother tongue, so do that in English and during your IELTS speaking test, okay? And then this brings me to the last point and the most important of them all. The one that will really determine your band is your grammar. Your grammar and your tense. As soon as you start speaking broken English, that's it. The examiner knows automatically you have no chance of scoring above a band 6. Okay? As soon as you start speaking broken English, what does that mean? It means that you're not using the correct tense when you're answering your questions, but it also means that you don't have good subject-verb agreement, and your tenses are all over the place, and your grammar as well. You are not using the correct prepositions, for example. Okay, now if I give you an example in example 1, some parts of the country, especially in the north, the preposition in, okay, tend to, the preposition to, okay, and on the other hand, okay. And in example 3, for example, you can see I have used I can do a lot of outdoor activities. So it is very important that you're using the correct tense, but also that you're using the correct grammar in terms of, for example, subject-verb agreement, but also prepositions, using them correctly, and also ensuring that you use your linking words correctly. Okay, like I've said, we have linking words that do different things. Like, for example, in the first sentence, I use the linking word but because I'm contrasting. Some parts of the country, especially in the north, tend to experience a heavy downpour throughout the year, but, okay, so I'm contrasting because the rest of the country is often quite dry. Okay. In example 2, I said I would prefer less rain only because, so I'm giving a reason why I prefer less rain. That's why I use the connector because I hate getting soaked in the rain. And then I wanted to contrast that. But on the other hand, so personally, I prefer less rain. But on the other hand, because I care about the farmers, I would prefer that we have more rain. So I use the connector on the other hand, but on the other hand. And then when you want to give examples, look at sample answer 3. In general, I enjoy sunnier days more, and then I'm giving a reason. So I use the connector or linking word because, okay? And then I say because I can do a lot of outdoor activities. And now I want to give some examples of outdoor activities. So I use the linking word such as. Okay, so such as is a linking word that we use when we want to when we want to give some examples. And then on rainy days, however, so I'm now contrasting the rainy days to the sunnier days. Remember, I started the answer with talking about sunnier days, and now I want to talk about rainy days. So I used however. I tend to feel a bit down and less energetic. So when you want to add points together, then you use and as a linking word, okay? So be very careful on what type of linking word that you use. Make sure you use them correctly. Okay, in number 4, you can see lack of rain can lead to a drought, which may cause starvation because, so I'm using because there because I want to give a reason. And as a result, as a consequence, so I can use as a result or I can use as a consequence, okay, consequently, okay. Now, then in number 5, you can see I use as well as. So when you want to add points together, like I feel a bit down as well as less energetic, or I feel a bit down and energetic, okay? Now, this brings me to the last section of this lesson where I'm going to read out the questions for you, and as I read out the questions, think of your answer. Are you ready? Okay. Question 1. Does it rain much in your country? Question 2. Would you prefer to have more or less rain in your country? Question 3. Do you prefer rainy or sunny days? Question 4. What effects can shortage of rain have on people's lives? Question 5. Does rain affect transportation in your country? Now, I hope you answered those questions correctly, but if you had a few problems here and there, do not worry at all, because you still have the sample answers, so you can adapt your sample answers to your own answers. And if you're planning to sit for your IELTS speaking test in the next few days or in the near future, I wish you all the best. Remember, all it takes is practice. Practice speaking as much as possible, okay? Now, if you found this lesson helpful, then please subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and share this video on all your social media platforms. Have you subscribed? Have you given me a thumbs up? Oh, now thank you so much, and see you in our next lesson. Bye bye.